Hey everybody, it's Cody Gilkison. Welcome to another episode of CultureCast, the bi-weekly podcast about what makes us us. Today we're talking about Minority Mental Health Month, and in the month of July we're really excited because we are bringing you guests from the all-new DEI team. So today we're welcoming Morgan Johnson, our brand newly minted DEI communications coordinator. Morgan, welcome.
Thank you, Cody. I appreciate you allowing me to be on this platform.
That's fantastic. Do you want to give everybody a little bit of background about your journey with eXp, how long you've been with us, what your role used to be, and how you came to be on the DEI team?
Yeah, so I started with eXp in November of 2022 as an administrative support coordinator with the state of Washington. Shout out to Washington. I love those guys.
Woo.
Um, and then slowly throughout my journey, I started a video series called Morgan the Explorer that basically taught agents how to use World, how to get plugged in, and stuff like that. Shortly, I want to say I've been here for almost 2 years. My former manager and mentor, Erin Holman, told me about the DEI position and she told me I would be great for it. And I didn't see it originally until I met with Cody, and it was an amazing interview. And you really don't realize how, as an African American woman, DEI is a normal way of life. So I'm super excited.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And I tell you, what we saw from you in the Washington State team with your really interactive newsletters, that's something that people can really look forward to us adopting with 1EXP, where you're going to be able to get an inside scoop on what's going on 1EXP in a really interactive, sort of engaging way that's not just words on a page. So we're really going to bring this thing to life, and Morgan's going to be right at the front of that piece. I also want to plug that right now we're looking for DEI champions. We're looking for folks who are interested from a staff perspective. If you're a staff member and want to do something with 1EXP, then this is a great opportunity for you to learn how to make engaging social media posts and also embrace diversity, equity, and inclusion. So we have a number of groups that we're looking to get some folks who are willing to be part of a team of DEI champions who creates engaging posts that are really inclusive content, stuff about history, facts, stuff that's going on the news with that group, and posting them into those things. And the real benefit of that is you get to grow as a group of champions, but you also get to learn from us and learn from Morgan. We're going to hold a monthly meeting with all the DEI champions to help mold and guide them and really use this as a tool for professional growth. So if you're interested in that, reach out directly to me or to Morgan, and you can email us at dei@exprealty.net. So we recognize Minority Mental Health Month. Can you share with us the unique challenges faced by minority communities when it comes to mental health and accessing mental health services?
Yeah, I find accessing mental health services, I'll start with that. It's kind of difficult in minority communities. And I live in Arizona and I live in sort of a rough part of town. So in order for me to go see my therapist, I have to drive like an hour away. So if I had a therapist that was a lot closer to my home, it would be much more convenient. Also, it took me a very long time to settle in on a therapist due to them not understanding where I'm coming from as an African American woman when it comes to discrimination and different challenges I face every day. So it's sometimes difficult, or it was difficult for me to find someone that understood me.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I think that lack of competent care is really is something that strikes a lot of different communities and something that I've experienced too. I think growing up down south, a lot of my um, depression and stuff stemmed from being closeted and gay in the South, and all of the care for mental health treatment that was out there for me was very religious based
Mhm.
and very negative. It was sort of like the better thing for you to do is uh, fight these demons, right? When that's not. I needed to embrace my pride, embrace my rainbow, right? That's what would have really helped me. I also think that um, particularly for people of color, when you go to a counselor who can't relate to you culturally and relate to your background, you automatically just feel othered, and it's
Yeah.
hard to be honest with your truth when you're feeling that headspace. Um, and I also say that culturally competent care doesn't necessarily mean you must seek out therapy from someone who shares your exact background. I
Right.
bounced between therapist and therapist and therapist and therapist and therapist, and the first one that I felt really saw or heard me was a white woman in her early 90s. You know, we could not have been more different,
Right.
honestly. A white, straight, cisgender woman, and in
Right.
her 90s, but she saw me, you know what I mean, in a
Yeah.
way that that also comes with like experience and
Mhm.
having had clients of all those different, backgrounds. Yeah.
Yeah, I
Um,
had a similar experience. The very first time I ever went to a therapist, it was back when I was 20, and it was a Caucasian male. And when I was talking about, the fact that my dad was in and out of my life, my mom is going through this when I was a child, and this is why I act, and I'm trying to figure out why I feel depressed and why I feel the way that I feel and why I think the way that I think. He didn't really I wasn't getting like a back and forth from him.
mhm.
All he said was try meditating. So that one thing, him saying that, I was 20 when I was like, okay, yeah, I have something going on. Like
Yeah.
there's no way that I feel this way every single day. So going to him and him just saying, "Oh, well, you just need to meditate. Come back in a week and pay me my copay." Like that was crazy for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I for 11 years didn't go to a therapist or seek another therapist because I was like, they're all going to be this way. I don't want to, I don't want to do this.
Yeah, it's so true. And
Yeah.
one of my things, this, it's not necessarily a cultural thing, but to me, if you're going and seeking treatment for anything related to depression and your therapist's first piece of advice is you should do more things that make you happy, it's a no-go for me. Like
Yeah.
I could have got that advice from my mom, right? You
Right.
know what I mean? Like that's not when you're depressed, it's not as easy as do things that make you happy because you don't have the motivation to do things that make you happy
At
because you're
all.
depressed,
Right.
right?
At all.
It's not that simple.
Yeah.
So let's talk about stigmas. I know you've had some experience with this, but what sorts of stigmas exist in the African American community in regards to mental health and in regards to getting help for your mental health?
So my family, I'll start with the way I was raised. The way I was raised by a single African American mother who worked hard to provide for me. My grandma took care of me the majority of the time, and my dad was in and out of my life. So um, once I realized that something was wrong or like I thought differently, um, I told my mother, and at the time she went to school for psychology eventually, but um, once I told her, like, Mom, I don't feel normal. I don't know what's going on. My mind I'm freezing up. I can't think. I can't do anything. She didn't understand at the time. So that's when she told me to go to the counselor. She said she always knew something was up, but she just didn't want to say anything.
Hmm.
Um, so getting help was something I had to seek out on my own. Once my family found out that I was seeking counseling, they kind of like thought that I was crazy. I felt like they thought like I wasn't strong enough because growing up the way that I grew up, I only see my mom cry maybe 3, 4 times in my entire
Mm.
lifetime. So I feel like I was raised to be a strong woman and just ignore the way that I feel, and that's all fine and dandy, but I couldn't do that. I couldn't ignore the fact that sometimes I just didn't want to be present, and not in a negative aspect like taking my life. I just didn't want to be anywhere with anyone. I just wanted to be alone. I'm already an only child, so it scared my mother. So my family just told me that I was nuts. And I think that's I think it's like very present in the African American community. when you are seeking help, that your family, sometimes they will be supportive, but sometimes they won't understand why you can't just be strong. And I couldn't be
Yeah.
strong. I couldn't be as strong as my mom or the way that I saw her. It was just very difficult for me.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's intense.
Yeah.
So how did you overcome those social barriers within your community, within your family, and come to the decision to get treatment yourself?
It actually stemmed from a relationship about, well, I think my last relationship ended when I was 29. I'm 31 now.
Mm.
And I realized that the person that I was dating at the time was a narcissist. And I didn't know that until I was out of the situation.
Mm.
So, with that triggering my past feelings, I've always felt depressed, didn't know what was going on, but this intensified to the point where my depression was a fog. I don't remember. This is crazy to say to some people. They're like, what? I don't remember the last like year and a half of my life because
Wow.
it's kind of like the movie Click with Adam Sandler. You know, when he would like rewind or fast forward, and then he'd be like, what did I do to get here? That's it. I woke up one day, I was like, what did I do to get here?
Mm.
And it took a classmate of mine dying the end of last year to realize I really had no impact. And I felt like if I were to pass away, no one would remember me because I haven't done anything. So that kind of like woke me up. And I started to seek a therapist to get assistance and help. And she's been amazing. It was hard for me to come to that conclusion because I always tried to be strong and follow in the footsteps of my mom, but I
Yeah.
had to realize like I'm not my mother. And she got through things that I probably wouldn't be able to get through myself.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
I yeah, I can really relate to that sentiment of thinking about what happens if I pass, right? Who cares,
Yeah.
right? That was a real moment for me as well. There was a time, this is I always said I would be honest in this job. There was a time maybe 4 years ago now at this point where I'm happily married, had foster kids at the time, had all the things that I ever wanted out of my life was leading a team at my former job and thriving. And I on the underside of that, what a lot of people don't see was heavily suicidal. And it was that thought of who cares if I die that really I started to feel like this is becoming too real. It's starting to become more than thoughts. I might act on this.
Hmm.
That led me to reach out and get help. And I was really lucky at my old job. And we have the same sort of thing here at eXp where, we have the employee assistance program. You can call in, you can get some help. They can help you identify someone. They picked out this woman. This is when I spoke to the 90-year-old white woman who helped me, figure my stuff out and give me a safety plan. And, you know, I think the message we really want to get across, particularly for people that come from a minority background, when it comes to your mental health, you don't have to wait for a crisis to get help,
Exactly.
right?
Especially when something is going on in your mind. And I come from a heavily religious family. Um, the entirety of my roots is based in religion. So a
Right.
huge thing for me that I forgot to mention is my family always told me, well, God can get you through it. And why that may be true for some people, it just like God created others to help others. So that's my personal opinion of that situation. So it was always like, oh, well, you just need to pray. Oh, well, you just need to do this. Oh, well, you just need to do that. And it never worked. And I never understood that. So that's like a huge thing is as well is although I might be religious and I do believe in equality and my family does not, religion played a huge factor on why I didn't want to get help as well, because I was like, maybe I can just pray it away.
Yeah, yeah. And for me, mental health had a stigma because all the counselors I went to, the only thing they gave me was pray, right?
Hmm.
They didn't give me any other tools to use to help myself. Um, prayer wasn't working for me. There was something going on in my brain chemistry that I needed to address, right?
Right.
Um, so so let's talk about the real estate side of this a little bit. What are some culturally sensitive approaches that eXp Realty agents can adopt when they're working with clients from diverse backgrounds to ensure that their mental well-being is considered during the home selling and buying process?
So I feel like it's important to stay educated about different cultural norms, values, and practices. That will help you understand your client's perspective and avoid misunderstandings. And then also continuously learning and adapting, staying informed about evolving cultural dynamics, seek feedback from clients, and be open to constructive criticism. I think that's huge.
Yeah, yeah, that's a big piece of it is you got to keep your ears and your mind open when you're dealing from with clients from a different background than yours. And if you really feel that you're super culturally disconnected from one of your clients, we have all these 1EXP resource groups, right? And they're not just for people from that group. They're for you as an agent to join to learn more about being inclusive in your selling process and buying process. So I would say if you're disconnected from your client, the first thing you do is go find that community at eXp and seek out the help. The members there, use them as a sounding board, educate yourself, attend some of those events, look at some of their past video content on their workplace group and see if you can get some new understanding. I think it's also a really cool opportunity for you to have a good referral network if there are other services and stuff that your clients need and you want to look for a culturally appropriate option. 1EXP groups are there for you. We also always plug that if you're part of a group that isn't represented by a 1EXP resource group and you want to be, we have the DEI Champions program. So you can come to us with a pitch for a group, and we at the DEI team will help you grow that idea into a living, breathing organism on Workplace, and then pitch you to 1EXP to become a new resource group. We don't by any means think that we are covering all the bases. So if your base isn't covered, let us know. Now let's talk about representation, right? This is a big part of the DEI conversation, period. But, can you discuss the importance of representation and diversity within the real estate business and how that can positively impact the mental health outcomes for our minority communities?
Yeah, I feel when real estate professionals come from diverse backgrounds and communities, they bring a deeper understanding, and the cultural understanding allows them to empathize with their clients' experiences and provide personalized support through the home buying process. Also, representation in the real estate industry helps build trust between agents and minority clients. When clients see professionals who share their cultural background or have a demonstrated commitment to diversity, they are more likely to feel understood.
Yeah, 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 I'd agree with that. I think representation matters, period.
Yeah.
And historically, minority communities have faced systemic barriers and discrimination in housing. They always have. And by like increasing the representation and diversity in the industry, professionals can actively challenge these biases and work towards equitable housing access for all. That's like, fair housing is sort of the name of the game. And then when minority clients encounter professionals who advocate for their rights and their concerns, that positively impacts their mental health and reduces their stress and frustration and all that stuff that's associated with discrimination.
Yeah.
So, it's the same sort of bit that we see about why representation is important in the media. right? Because it matters to people that they can see people in this industry that look and sound like them. If a minority person, say a young homeowner, has never seen anything but race or gender or background that is opposite of them in the real estate business, they've never seen someone they can relate to, they are just less likely to be inclined to want to buy a home. Or they go into the home buying process with the ready expectation that I'm going to have to deal with someone who doesn't get it.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
100%. I agree.
Yeah. And I feel like it's the same way in the mental health space, right?
Oh, yeah, it
If
definitely
you
is.
never see anybody that relates to you, like,
or understands what you're going through. That's huge.
yeah,
It's
for
very
sure.
difficult to find someone who is like, oh, yeah, I've been through that. Or even if you're not from the same cultural background, just going through certain situations, if you don't have someone that understands where you're coming from, it's very difficult to connect with that person.
Yeah. I mean, I think if you, as somebody from an underrepresented community, if you sit down in a therapist's office right away when you sit across from the person and you can tell right away this person isn't like me,
Hmm.
there's already that level set that I've got a barrier to overcome to get them to understand me.
Right.
And sometimes, even if that's not the case, even if that barrier is down the minute that therapist opens their mouth, there still exists that mental gymnastic is happening in your head. Right?
Yeah. And then
How
you
do I
won't
have
be
this?
able to properly open up to them.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like the point, right? Is to get full help for what you're going through. And if you can't fully open up to the person that you're speaking with, you're in the same hamster wheel.
Yeah. It's so true. It's so true. And, for me, this is when I was little, before I went to elementary school, my parents sort of they worked a lot and they didn't really have a lot of time for me during the day. So I was in my infant years up until maybe 6 or 7.
Mhm.
Um, I was passed off to a woman who started as a sort of nanny that came by and fed me and that sort of thing. To okay, she didn't really have time to do this because she was also raising her grandkids. So I would go to her house every day until my parents got off at 6 o'clock. So during those formative years of my life, I grew up in a black household.
Yeah.
And it was one of those things where I found it really hard to relate to anyone. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I would come home and my parents would, have a completely different opposing view to what I was taught while I was there.
Yeah.
Um, and you learn a lot of things when you're a kid that age through osmosis, sort of just being around people and the way that they talk and the way that they interact and all that kind of thing. So, yeah, I think that representation was always tough for me
Yeah.
because then I've also got this piece. You think this is when we talk about intersectionality is more than just your race, your gender, your religion. It's all of those things. And
Combined.
one of the things that impacts my intersectional identity is that for a long time in my childhood, because my parents were, because my immediate family was, because my church was segregated, I felt like when I was around white people, I had to police the way that I talked and acted about race
Yeah.
because they were racists. Right? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's tough to say about your own family, but it always was one of those things where I had a bias against white folks.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it had nothing to do with white folks in general. It had to do with I was going and learning from a really vibrant group of people about equality, about the civil rights movement, about, me and May sat by a record player and listened to records all the time. It's how I grew to love Motown and old school soul music and all that kind of stuff. But also, she would regularly, at least twice a week, put on I Have a Dream,
Yeah.
the speech on record right there. And all of us kids, regardless of where we were in the day, we knew to sit and listen, right?
Yeah.
But then I would come home and my parents would use racist language. And my grandparents would like also use sort of racist language. So I grew up in this real like, where do I fit?
Right.
And throw on top of that, I'm adopted. So
Yeah.
I already felt like it didn't really fit. Yeah.
I think I had somewhat of not really similar, but I was pulled as a child between two different racial groups. So I grew up with Hispanic kids because my mom sent me to Catholic school. So,
Okay.
and then, so I was Catholic school during the day and then switching back to an African American child at night. And it was very difficult eventually to balance the two because I felt that, African American people would be like, well, you hang out with blah, 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 racial slurs or whatever. So that's who you are. But in reality, I was just learning from the different racial group and just gathering. I don't know how to describe it, but that's just, I understand where you're coming from.
Right. And that really impacts your mental health when you can't put your finger on the pulse of your cultural identity.
Exactly.
Right.
It took me a long time to understand, like just me. My mom kept me rooted in African American culture. She made me go to the library. I had to do book reports about it. Every Black History Month, every day we would do something. But then to go to the Hispanic community and not even be